Coming up on Windows Weekly, Leo Laporte is at Disney, so I, Micah Sargent, am stepping in, and we have, as you might expect, a jam-packed show. First, we take a look at where Microsoft and the FTC stand, because tomorrow, as we record this show, will be Thursday, and the FTC will be taking Microsoft to task. Will the deal go through? Will it not? Plus, Paul has some thoughts about the CMA. They're not good thoughts. He's very mad at the CMA. Also, we talk about Moment 3, and there's a lot of confusion there because it sort of came out before it was supposed to. I don't know, but Paul tries to explain before we head into Outlook confusion and, of course, Xbox Corner. There's a lot to talk about coming up on Windows Weekly.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Windows Weekly with Micah Sargent, Paul Thurrott, and Richard Campbell, episode 834, recorded Wednesday, June 21st, 2023. The soothing sounds of trains. This episode of Windows Weekly is brought to you by Melissa. More than 10,000 clients worldwide rely on Melissa for full-spectrum data quality and ID verification software. Make sure your customer contact data is up to date. Get started today with 1,000 records cleaned for free at melissa.com/twit. And by Miro. Miro is your team's online workspace to connect, collaborate, and create together. Tap into a way to map processes, systems, and plans with the whole team and get your first 3 boards for free to start creating your best work yet at miro.com/podcast. And by Lenovo, orchestrated by the experts at CDW, to help transform your organization with Lenovo ThinkPads, equipped with the Intel Evo platform for effortless connectivity and collaboration from anywhere. Learn more at cdw.com/Lenovo Client. It's time for Windows Weekly, the show where we talk to of the most wonderful Windows watchers in the world every week about things going on with Windows, with Microsoft, and everything in between. Oftentimes these days, it's all about regulation. This voice is going to sound different because it is the voice of Micah Sargent, not Leo Laporte, as Leo Laporte is wearing Mickey Mouse ears at Disneyland. Yes, it's the land, not the world, the one in California.
It's weird that he needed a second job. You know?
Yeah. He said, oh boy, I've got to get out of here, man. And with that, let me introduce our Windows watchers. First, it's Paul Thurrott of Thurrott.com. Hello, Paul.
Hello there, Micah.
How was your commute this morning, Paul?
It was short.
Short and sweet.
There was not a lot of traffic. I'm just eyeballing it. It might have been 18 feet, you know?
Wow.
I live in a small place.
Yes. We also have Richard Campbell coming to us from some, it's disclosed. It's a disclosed location. Where are you coming from, Richard?
I'm in Shawnee, Kansas. I'm here near Kansas City. I'm at a conference this week, and so stayed with some friends. This is the room where they do gaming from, hence the glowing microphone and all this fun gear, but I thought I'd hybridize my laptop with their better camera and microphone rig just to see what we got from that. And of course, the great back wall. I think that's gorgeous.
Oh my goodness,
yeah,
I love that back
That's
wall.
fantastic.
I do have to point out, you did say hybridize, so I think someone has to take a shot somewhere.
There you go.
That does feel very appropriate for Windows Weekly. So with that,
I will allow it.
Good. Thank you. Let's kick things off by talking about the latest in what round is this for the FTC versus Microsoft?
Round 47. This is going on. What is this? The Ben-Hur merger? It's been going on forever.
I'm hoping it's the final round. You know, either way, I guess I'm getting a little tired of this. Timing wise, this show this week is not in a great place because the FTC and Microsoft are going to face off in court for several days of hearings starting tomorrow and Thursday, June 22nd. So next week we'll know, right? Hopefully before next week, what's going on there. But in anticipation of this, both sides have started filing documents, filing whatever. And the FTC has no case. It's so beautiful to watch them sputter. So the FTC, it's just pointing to the same thing over and over again, that Microsoft's previous acquisition of ZeniMax, which Bethesda is part of, is powerful evidence, in their words, that it should not be allowed to acquire Activision Blizzard, right? Because Microsoft, after the acquisition, made some previously planned to be cross-platform titles like Redfall, which is a piece of crap, and Starfield, which is eagerly anticipated and exclusive to its own platforms. So the argument here is obvious that they'll do the same thing with Activision Blizzard, so they shouldn't be allowed to do this.
Isn't this where the FTC says we'll allow it as long as you don't do that?
Yeah, see, that's the thing, and this is my argument. You ever watch you ever watch a TV show, right, or a movie, and maybe you know something about the topic. So, for example, I used to work in banks, and so I'll watch a bank robbery movie or whatever, and I'll pause it and say, nope, that's not how it works. You can't do what they just did. Like, that's fake. What's worse than that is when you know nothing about a topic, right? And you're watching a TV show or movie, and you pause it and you go, you know what? That's not how the world works. I'm going to look that up. I don't think so.
Right.
And sure enough, it's like, that's not how the world works. I find myself in the awkward position, and just to point out to the FTC what their role is, which is not just to blindly block acquisitions. But see, I don't have to use my own language to do this, because Margaret Vestager, right, the EU competition commissioner,
who we both adore,
just is the best. Mm-hmm. And by the way, maybe leaving this office soon to get another job in the EU, which I'm a little freaked out by because I love her. But stay on topic, Paul. Is last month gave a speech where she explained why the EU disagrees with the UK CMA, which has aligned itself with the FTC in trying to block or in blocking
and
this
did it very elegantly, as I recall, too.
I referred to it. I wrote that it was a masterclass in competence.
Mm.
So what she basically said is that some people believe that regulatory agencies either have to block or clear mergers, and that's it. And she's like, there's nothing black or white about this stuff. It's all gray area. And sometimes a structural remedy, as that would be called, is required, but sometimes behavioral remedies make sense. Interestingly, in the case of the EU, 80% of their conditional clearances of mergers and acquisitions required structural remedies, she says. Only 20% have required behavioral remedies, or possibly no remedies. I don't know. So in this case, she pointed out accurately that this acquisition is a positive development for everyone involved, right? The impact to gamers will be positive because these games will be available in more places. The impact to cloud streaming, which is an upcoming market, will be positive because Microsoft has agreed to put their games everywhere. Once Microsoft has made these agreements, which basically amount to 10-year agreements to either bring Call of Duty or other major Activision titles to competing platforms, or to bring any cloud streaming games that Microsoft offers to competing cloud streaming solutions. That answers the question. It's fine. That answers it. Literally, she says this solution fully addresses our concerns. And it has significant pro-competitive benefits. For example, Activision today does not participate in cloud streaming services. It will under Microsoft. This will dramatically increase the availability of its games to new audiences. And that's the thing. So the problem with the FTC today is that the Biden administration has just gone to them and said, look, we need to be tough on big tech. End of sentence. So they just say no to everything. The problem is they've said no to everything after when all the harm happened by companies like Amazon and Apple and Google and Meta. And the company they've decided to pile onto here, Microsoft, is not changing the overall picture of the video game industry by making this acquisition. They are improving their lot, but they don't move up in the ratings. They don't become the number 2 or 3 player, depending on how you want to measure it. They don't really change anything, except for the fact that they're going to make these games available to more people.
Yeah. I thought the FTC's job was to protect the consumer.
Right.
And so,
right. So what's the consumer harm?
Yeah. Expanding the market for the games and, putting some remedies in place for the consumers to get a benefit from that. Yep. Kind of sounds like the job.
And I don't want to play the xenographic card, but I will. Sony, the major complaint here, is Japanese. Japan cleared this purchase, by the way. What are they protecting? You're preventing a major American corporation, the second biggest company in the world, from improving its position or positioning its position vis-a-vis other companies, I guess, in the video game industry. The major competitors of which in the console market are both Japanese.
Right.
So what? Like, so what? If Japan was concerned about that, they would have blocked it, but they did not.
And you would have also seen more of a diplomatic issue in general, right? These are the two major countries for the two major companies. Like, then things are a little bit tricky.
Right. The problem with the FTC is that their response to all of this is the same response that Sony gives, which basically, when you chip away and chip away and chip away, boils down to, we just don't want it.
Right.
And that's not the law. I'm sorry. So my tune on this has not changed over the last several months. There is absolutely no logical or legal justification to blocking this merger. It makes no sense. But we'll see what happens in court, right? I mean, this is the point of the hearing. So,
and we talked about this last week, but it seemed to me that the FTC play by Microsoft was to get a court hearing, to get this resolved.
That's right.
This is by doing the court thing, it's a faster way of moving it forward.
Yeah. I mean, we're 9 days away from the end of the month, which is also the end of Microsoft's fiscal year. It's basically inconceivable that something dramatic will happen in this hearing and this thing will just be cleared and off they go. But I suppose there's a small chance of that, because otherwise Microsoft is on the hook for, I forgot the number, but I want to say $7 billion or some billions of dollars that they have to pay to Activision Blizzard because they were not able to finalize this acquisition by this time.
Year. Yeah. Yep. Just to add to the pile-on here, apparently the New Zealand Commerce Commission, yes, that's the smallest Western democracy in the world, all 5.5 million of them.
Right.
The New Zealand Commerce Commission has said that they have concerns.
Yeah. And you know what their concern should be? That the one pipe of internet that comes to their tiny island is severed somehow. Yeah. Because that would kill cloud gaming pretty quick.
Yeah, but I often describe New Zealand, which is the place I was born, as the end of the internet, right? Like it is kind of in a corner over there. Right. That being said, the commission has basically said, we want to do a review. They have till July 17th to complete that review. And it could easily just say, we approve.
Yeah. Okay. I would say New Zealand is small enough that their complaints in the scope of what Microsoft has fought for here will go unheeded. I
don't think there'll be a whole lot of consideration there. I can't imagine.
In fact, I would even go so far as to say if the FTC, well, the FTC won't allow it, but if the courts allow, throw out the FTC suit, and I think Microsoft will close this transaction immediately and say the CMA can figure it out for themselves.
Yeah. If ask the CMA, how would you like us to proceed? Do you want us to deny access to UK citizens to these products? We can do that.
Yeah, just let us know.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that's happening. And it's a shame it's happening tomorrow, because I'd really love to see what actually happens in court.
Well, I got to think we'll be talking about this next week. The question whether or not the FTC will ultimately complete the response, or even that the judge will decide, we may not know next week, but I don't know if they're going to televise the hearings, but I'm sure it's exciting watching.
It will probably be like the Microsoft antitrust stuff, where at the very least there will be people in court reporting live on what happens.
There'll be some summaries,
And the thing we're looking for here is whether looking for the questions a judge might ask, or whatever the panel of judges they have, whatever the situation is. Because that often indicates where their heads are at and what direction they're going.
And I got to imagine the only question a judge is going to ask is, what is the harm to consumers?
Yeah. And then you'll hear a cricket chirp.
And with all of these, it always feels like it gets dragged out and out and out and out and out, depending on, regardless of whether the outcome is what one might want. So this seems to be, you'll still be talking about this even after this next ruling.
Yeah. Yes. And there are other things to consider. Like when we talked about this, I think last week or the week before, what does Xbox look like if they don't get this acquisition? Microsoft is trying to paint a picture where everything's fine. I think I would argue otherwise, but there's that. But if anyone's a sports fan, especially football is like this, I would say, American football, where you can watch a game and nothing's happening. It's boring. The score's pretty tight. It's a low score. Nothing's happening. And you're all of a sudden you're 3 minutes away from the end of the game. And there's a lot of scoring now, a lot of chance plays, a lot of stuff happens, a lot of long ball. And that's what this is like. It's like we've had 18 months of various back and forths and news here and there. But like this thing has just dragged on. And now all of a sudden it's reaching this weird crescendo where the whole thing is on the line now, you know? And it's just it's a weird ending. I did expect it to take a while because this acquisition does merit some form of oversight. And, you know, that's the thing. I mean, you know, the FTC talks about concerns. Like anyone who looks at this logically should have concerns, of course. But I feel like Microsoft has addressed those concerns. I think that's kind of the point. But I thought it would not sail through. It would take time. You know, you want to give it the time it deserves. But I'm shocked at the couple of countries that have said no, and especially shocked because their rationale makes no sense. No sense. Listen, I'm not closed-minded. I will listen to evidence. I will change my mind based on evidence, et cetera, et cetera. No one has ever come up with some salient reason why this doesn't make sense. It just, other than, again, it always boils, I just don't want it. You know, there are people who are like critical of Microsoft. They're a big company. I just said like the second biggest company in the world. I get it. You know, the big get bigger. I get it, but it's also not illegal. And
right.
It's just.
And it's the thing is, it doesn't have to make sense. What you have to do is prove harm.
Right.
And if you can't prove harm, then there's really no excuse to block this.
This is honestly an ideal situation if you care about any of these games, because Microsoft is now bound by the law to make sure that these games appear on as many platforms as possible. They've reached legal agreements, not just with regulatory bodies, but legal agreements with other companies to make sure that their products and services end up on those other platforms.
Yeah. No, I think the strongest argument here is that the consumer is better protected by this merger than they were before.
That's right. That's right. Yep.
Anything else you want to say about this upcoming court case before, or I guess latest part of it, before we take a quick break?
Well, I just like to reiterate how much I can't stand the CMA. I hate those guys, the burning passion, unelected idiots. But no, I guess not.
All right. Well, we will take a quick break before we come back with loads more here on Windows Weekly. Yes, if you are just now tuning in, I'm Micah Sargent filling in for Leo Laporte, who will be back very soon, presumably with lots of, Mickey Mouse lapel pins. I don't know what happens when you go there, what you get these days. Man. I know when I went way back in the day, I came back with a little signature book filled with the signatures of all of the characters, which was nice.
I'm sorry, how old were you at this time?
I was in kindergarten.
Good.
So yeah, 6 years old, something like that. All right, let us take a break so I can tell you about Melissa. We're bringing you this episode of Windows Weekly. Melissa are the data quality experts. E-commerce losses to online payment fraud were estimated at $41 billion globally in 2022. That's a lot. It's a lot of dough lost. Melissa ID helps organizations tackle identity fraud with an end-to-end process to safely track customer data. The biometrics verification step features an algorithm that recognizes a matchup between the user's selfie or a self-portrait and their ID image. Biometrics verification identifies a set of more than 60 facial features and distinguishes changes between that image and the ID image, including facial hair, makeup, age difference, hairstyles, skin imperfections, and positions in head pose. This technology gives businesses an added layer of security and confidence in knowing their customers are who they say they are, which is incredibly important. There are lots of regulations and rules and guidelines that surround making sure that the person to whom you're selling is truly the person that they say they are. The financial industry and e-commerce retailers are already using AI-powered fraud detection systems to safeguard their customers from fraud. For example, banks and credit card companies are utilizing machine learning algorithms to scrutinize customer data, such as purchase history and location, to detect suspicious transactions. And retailers are leveraging AI-powered fraud detection systems to prevent fraudulent orders and chargebacks, which can start to add up over time. So reduce risk, ensure compliance, and keep customers happy. All of that can happen with Melissa's ID tools. You're going to get proof of life scans that will look at the face and check for eye movement to establish that the person is real. Also, document verification, which captures ID and document data using machine-readable zone and optical character recognition document scanning to extract crucial information from passports, from utility bills, from driver's licenses, and more. And biometrics, which use smart facial recognition and facial comparison algorithms to recognize a match between a selfie and the ID image. Since 1985, Melissa has specialized in global intelligence solutions. And just so you know, your data is safe. Melissa continually undergoes independent security audits and is SOC 2, HIPAA, and GDPR compliant, so you know your data is in the best hands. Make sure your customer contact data is up to date. Get started today with 1,000 records cleaned for free at melissa.com/twit. That's melissa.com/twit. And we thank Melissa for sponsoring this week's episode of Windows Weekly. All right, we are back from the break, and it's time for a new moment. Or maybe it's the same moment? I'm confused, Paul. What's going on?
I asked you earlier how old you were when you went to Disney, and you were in kindergarten, which is the right answer. It reminded me of we had friends out for New Year's and talking about Washington, D.C., and I love dinosaurs, and we went to the Museum of Natural History, and I got to get a picture of myself riding a dinosaur.
Oh, that's awesome.
And my wife's friend, I put it in the notes. My wife's friend said, "Oh, that's cool. How old were you?" And I said, "I don't know, 35, 36. She was like, "What?" Because she assumed I was a child.
Right.
And I was literally the one 6 foot tall person in a line of children waiting to get a picture on a dinosaur, which I did. So.
Oh, see, some things make us children again, right? For you, it's
I just love
dinos.
dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Dinosaurs and trains.
Oh,
Anywho,
I didn't know you were a train guy. Huh.
Oh, yes. Yes. Follow me on Instagram. It will be a disappointing, never-ending collection of train photos. Yes. Anyway, so people who are fans of the show or have been following along will know that Microsoft released Moment 3, as we call it, to stable last week, meaning through Windows Update. And you will then be confused to discover that Microsoft yesterday released Windows 11 Moment 3 to the release preview channel of the Windows Insider program, which should trigger a record scratch confusion moment in everyone's brain. So welcome to my life. And when I tell you, I've been bringing this topic up all year, and I feel like some people don't fully understand it, but there used to be able to speak very definitively about what Microsoft was doing. And then sometimes you could say, well, this was logical or it wasn't logical, but at least you could explain it. And this year it's turned into something where I can't explain it. I can just backtrack and kind of go through it and try to figure it out and whatever. So without belaboring the point, because honestly, I find this topic incredibly tedious right now, I'll just say that Microsoft, one of the ways in which Microsoft updates Windows is through something called a controlled feature release, or a CFR. And this is something that can appear at any time on different computers. It's deployed randomly, and I mean that literally. And what that means is if you have two computers, one might get the feature, one might not, even though they're on exactly the same version and whatever. And that's the way they do things. I please don't ask me why or what the rationale is. I just don't. I can't. I don't know. So when this initial release of Moment 3 occurred a week ago, I noticed, and I saw in my feedback to the article, that different computers were getting different sets of these features. I also noticed that not the full feature set that had been promised for Moment 3 was released on any of the computers that I had. And I think what happened this week maybe suggests why. So for some reason, again, who knows why, Microsoft released some of the Moment 3 features a week ago. They have not said this, right? I'm just an educated guess based on what I do know about their release schedule, are almost certainly going to release it on Patch Tuesday next month. And here's my rationale for that. They released it to the final phase of the Windows Insider program this week. Next week is week D. That's when they release preview updates, right? So it makes sense that it would go from release preview into stable preview, meaning if you have to go choose to get it, 2 weeks after that is the normal schedule. Week B in July, that's Patch Tuesday. That's when it's going to come out. It makes sense, other than the fact that I thought they already released this thing. So I don't know what to tell you anymore. They literally don't discuss any of this stuff. They don't explain it. It's confusing. It's illogical. It's maddening. I don't know. So that's where we're at.
So they don't even acknowledge it. They don't acknowledge the fact that it makes no sense.
What blows my mind is the only semi-acknowledgement of this staggered release schedule is that Microsoft wrote, and I'll just quote it, as part of this update, we are enabling the new features and enhancements that began gradually rolling out last month. But last month is May. Not June, not 1 week ago, right? So if you click on that, if you click on the link, wait, is there a link? Yeah. If you click on the link, it goes to a May 24th Windows configuration update, which does actually include some of the features. I'll just leave it at that. I don't know what to say. I don't know anymore. I feel like I have spent too much time in my professional life saying I don't know, but as troubling as that is to me personally, I can at least rest easy knowing it's not my fault, that it's not some laziness on my part. I don't know because I don't think Microsoft knows. I don't think they understand what they're doing. I literally don't think they know what they're doing.
I'm trying to figure out, I mean, they've only had 3 moments so far. Has any of them been the same mechanism? Like, I think they've all been different.
They have all been different. Yep. Before there was a, what do you call it? Like 1 time is coincidence, 2 times is.
Yeah. How does that go? Yeah.
What, the first one and the second one both had similarities where there was a preview release, even though back then they weren't calling it that. Some people were seeing features. Remember, we talked about the OneDrive stuff that happened in November, December is maybe one of the first big things. The search pill was one we talked about a lot. I felt like they were settling into a rhythm. And at some point, I forget the dates now, but let's say March probably, they kind of came out and said, hey, we established a schedule by which the preview updates won't come out in the 3rd week, they'll come out in the 4th week. That way they'll be perfectly between the 2-week Bs from intervening months. And okay, like that, I mean, whatever. Like that's, at least it's a statement about it. Like it makes some sense, I guess, whatever. But yeah, since then, features have just been appearing. I don't know what to say. I just don't know what to say. There's no rhyme or reason to this. There is no person that could come out and say, I got it. This is what they're doing. Like that doesn't exist. What's the Ian Fleming quote?
There it is. Once is happenstance.
Once is happenstance. Oh, twice is coincidence. Sorry.
Yeah, 3 times enemy action. Oh no, enemy action.
Yeah, there you go. Yep, it is. It's definitely, well, somebody was on Twitter was talking about whether or not this was malicious, and I was like, no, it's just incompetent.
Come on, malicious.
It's malicious.
There's another quote. Don't
you need some intelligence for maliciousness.
Yeah. What is it? Don't attribute.
There has to be a strategy.
Don't attribute to malice that which could be explained by incompetence.
There you go.
Often attributed to Napoleon, but that's doubtful.
Yeah. Okay. It's perfect though. It's right. Yeah, I think it's incompetence, and that's just based on everything I know about the team that's doing this right now. So. It's troubling.
Wow.
It's a great
Hold on. I just have to pause here. I don't know, Paul, if you're familiar with the term throwing shade, but there was some major shade that you just threw there.
Oh, sorry. If you're suggesting what I said was in any way passive aggressive, let me just make it fully aggressive. I think these people are freaking idiots, and they literally have no idea what they're doing, and it's just complete mismanagement. It's incompetence.
And is it just that no one cares that's on the end? But I don't mean internally, I mean externally, right? No one's complaining because no one cares.
I feel like it's bring your child to work day, but it never ended, and there are kids just throwing switches, and we have no idea what's happening.
But
there's absolutely no reason not to just release these on some formal schedule. There's no benefit to not doing that.
Are there forums somewhere where people are going, why is it? I guess it was on Reddit, but Reddit shut down. So I'm just trying to figure out, because Microsoft is so big on, we pay attention to the telemetry, blah, 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 blah.
Well, okay, but that's telemetry theater, right? So Microsoft makes a big show of explaining how much they love feedback.
Got it.
But there's very little evidence of them acting on feedback, at least in this part of the company. And I should be clear about that. Microsoft is a huge, complex company. This is a very specific part of it. There are parts of Microsoft that are incredibly well run. And I don't mean to, what do you say, cast shade, throw shade on other parts of Microsoft or all of Microsoft. It's more complex than that. But there's
you go back to the Sinofsky era.
Yeah.
Sinofsky was big on telemetry. Like he was the guy who said, I'm not going to ask the users anymore what they want. I'm going to watch what they do and we're going to act accordingly.
Yeah.
And I don't
also
know
big on
Terry
maliciousness.
Yeah.
You know,
I don't know that Myerson deviated much from that either. But to me, it feels more like the folks that created the Insider program, those folks are gone.
Right.
There are different. And so here's this Insider program with new people in charge.
The Insider program, as originally envisioned, as originally launched in October 2015, was an engineering group. And it was an incredible moment in time where we actually got insight into what it was like inside of Microsoft to deploy software before it ever went to beta testers or to the public.
Yeah.
And it was such a wonderful, short-lived thing. But it was, at that time, that's what it was. It was engineering. It was really them opening the kimono. It was a reaction to the Stasi-style Sinofsky years where everything was secret. And they said, look, we're just going to show you how we do it internally. And you can be part of it, you know. Whether or not that group responded to feedback better or more than the Sinofsky group, I mean, I guess we could debate that. I don't know. But the fact remains that, you know, Sinofsky's group would ship very small number of pre-release milestones, and this is what you get. And they would base the updates on telemetry, like you said. This group is like, we might ship builds all the time. You might get one every week, you know. This is the way it used to be done, by the way. If you were on the Windows 98 beta, it was one I remember very clearly, in 98 SE as well. Every Friday there was a build. That was how that worked. You got a build external to Microsoft every week.
Which was what was happening inside anyway. They were just exposing it to more people.
Yeah. There are different ways to do things. And I think, you know, in any organization like this, there are going to be reactions to the past. People come in, they want to set their own little agenda, do their own thing. But so there's a new group running this now, and the Insider program is still a thing, but it's a marketing exercise now. And it's run by unprofessional people who I have no idea what they're doing. It's just,
I think part of the challenge is Microsoft Windows is no longer center of the company. They actually have a freedom to do more.
Yep.
I think there's a lot of moving parts. It's a big group of folks. I honestly think what we're seeing is the residuals of more than one team pushing bits out.
This is like a daycare center where the adults left and never came back, and they forgot the kids were there, and now it's kind of like a Lord of the Flies situation.
It's a little bit Lord of the Flies.
I don't know what's going on over there.
What are they called? The Neverland Boys?
The thing that makes it, the thing that bugs me, aside from the obvious things that would bug me about this situation, because I care about Windows, right? I want this to be high quality, et cetera, et cetera. The leadership over there just keeps speak endlessly about how much quality matters, and, you know, and like it reminds me of like when Google does like I/O, or where they'll walk out and they'll say, nothing matters more to us than our users' privacy and security. And then you wait for the guy just to burst out laughing. Like, are you kidding? Are you that tone deaf to what the world knows about you? Do you actually not know that we know that you're not doing that? Like it's very much like that.
A person wearing a fur coat and saying, I would never kill an animal. It's like, no, we can see you
exactly.
wearing the fur
and it's
coat.
Literally bleeding.
Yeah.
You know?
Still got that. Yeah.
And
exactly.
it's like, anyway, someone asked, you know, do I
a little resentment about the fact that you've spent years of your career explaining things for this company, like in place of the company explaining themselves?
Listen, I've had a great career out of explaining what Microsoft's doing, and I should never lose sight of that. Like the thing that bothers me now though is I'm in the awkward position where I clearly care more about this than the people in charge of it.
Okay.
And that should never be the case. That should never be the case. These people should get up and only think about this stuff. This should be what they do. You have one job, do it right kind of thing. I don't understand. I have other hobbies and things that I do too. This is one thing. It's a big thing, but it's not my primary concern. I would like to think that if this was my primary concern, this thing would be trains running on time, to beat that metaphor to death.
But that is the Lord of the Flies quote, that the world, that understandable and lawful world, was slipping away.
Right. There you go.
I have to say, though, when you said that, Paul, I know you'll probably roll your eyes a little bit, but that did give me goosebumps a little bit, because I feel that, not in this necessarily, but just sort of that moment of going, why is it that this person on the outside seems to care more about this than the people who are actually doing it? Yeah, that would be something that would make you
Yeah, I don't. Everyone gets a little maybe too excited about like me ranting about something like I'm the history teacher from back to school. You know, he really cares about what we'll never know. You know, like I don't. I would like you to believe that I do care, of course, but I want you to know what I care about, and I want you to know that it's real. And I don't. It's not just like I'm not just waiting for something to go off on. I would love to have a calm week where everything went right. Mm-hmm. You know, that would be wonderful. I just feel like those things are fewer and farther between now than they used to be. And like I said, I can't say it any more clearly. I don't think these people have any idea what they're doing. And it makes me crazy. It really does.
I think sometimes when someone ends up sort of getting that narrative about them, which is the narrative for you from some listeners is that you get grumpy, then they may not hear what you're saying, or when they do hear what you're saying, they think that
it makes me sad that people, that happens.
And
I can see that.
You're not speaking in hyperbole here. And I think that's important. No. I think, Richard, you sort of help to back it up and kind of touch on it, which is, this incompetence that comes from what potentially is a bunch of teams working on the one thing. You talk about them pushing out, multiple teams being able to have the ability to push things out and sort of dig into what these little details are behind that lead to something like this happening, it seems, every week. And so, I think if people can take a moment and hear what you're saying, and that's why I think what you just said is important.
Granted, I'm walking around with a sandwich board in the town square with nothing else on it. I understand. I understand looking the other way. I get it. But whatever. I every time I think I have a handle on what's happening, something like this happens, and it's like, okay. And there's no clarity coming, right? There's no, what will happen is they'll release something and they'll cart John Cable out of whatever closet he lives in for the rest of the year, and he writes some long blog post about everything's great, and it's like, okay, do you use a Mac or something? Because honestly, I don't think everything's great.
No, I mean, the real thing you're waiting for is a push like this that knocks machines offline so they can't be fixed.
Yeah,
and then it's like the eye of Sauron will pivot back towards that.
Sure.
What are you doing?
Yeah, maybe
they will build some policy.
Yeah, maybe if Windows was so screwed up it stopped people from accessing their AI, someone would pay attention to it.
Oh, yeah. Or suddenly,
I don't know.
The whole ad that you wouldn't be able to see those wonderful Bing news stories that pop up anymore.
Yeah. I just redid the widgets chapter in the book yesterday, literally. And I haven't posted it yet. It doesn't matter. But hoping, against all hope, that maybe this thing has gotten better. Let me tell you, not so much. It's just the lowest quality collection of crap ever assembled in one place. It's astonishing how terrible it is. Like I'm bringing it up now like an idiot. But it's just this. Could this be news? Is that too much to ask? It's always these listicle things from really low quality. You're never going to believe the 10 things that happened on the blah, blah, blah movie, or 7 things an older person should never say to he was younger, blah, blah, blah. Or like,
Paul Thurrott, you're never going to believe what this cocktail. You'll never believe what happened next.
Yeah, exactly. I'll tell you what happened next. I fell asleep. I don't
listening
know.
To train sounds.
Yes, exactly. The soothing sounds of trains.
All right. Well, there's more here with this moment.
I didn't intend to spend that much time on that. I'm sorry.
I'm trying to move us along here because
yes.
Apparently, oh boy, we're still in church. It's time for the next sermon because we need to chat.
Yeah, I'm going to keep this one short. Richard, maybe you remember. I don't remember if this came up before, but there was a recent, I think it was an Insider Build blog post where they talked about how they were going to get rid of the chat icon in the Windows 11 taskbar, and what they were going to do is just replace it with the Teams consumer icon, like it'll just be a normal icon, right? And I think most people looked at that and thought, yeah, who cares? Nobody uses consumer Teams anyway. It's terrible or whatever. And here's the quiet kind of. I'm going to throw this in a different direction because this chat feature was actually kind of awesome, and it's an update to the Meet Now functionality that's in Windows 10, and it's Meet with 2 E's, not MEAT now. It's not like an anti-PATA thing. And basically, it was a pandemic era response to the fact that we were all at home and stuck and couldn't talk to each other. This is the time when Zoom kind of exploded and became the biggest thing in the world. So this is Microsoft's reaction. And it's a good idea. And in Windows 11, it's an even better idea because it's up front and center. It doesn't require you to actually kind of use Teams. In other words, like have all your contacts in there and all that stuff. You could literally type in anyone's email address or their phone number. They'll get a text or an email. It will give them a link and they can connect. If they have the Teams app on their phone, they can use it. If they don't, they'll go to a website. It works fine. And it's just a way that you can instantly get in touch with anyone and have a text, audio, or video chat at no cost to you. It's great. It's actually great. With one asterisk. Well, actually two asterisks. One is that nobody uses it, right? And I, for people who care about this stuff, I assume most people like watching the show probably just get rid of it. They hide it. They don't ever want to see it. And the other asterisk is that Microsoft completely bungled Teams Consumer. They replaced Skype with this product, but they didn't integrate with Skype. Like if you use this, you can't connect to your people on Skype. That should have been the baseline for this product. If you don't do that, then keep Skype in Windows and you keep it there until you can do that.
Not that they take Skype away. It's still there. Just, again, nobody uses it.
Yeah. So
it's been neglected.
Yeah. And then I get maybe there's a third asterisk is the obvious thing that now there are two apps called Teams that have very similar icons and very similar UIs that do not talk to each other, do not connect to the same group of contacts and all that stuff, don't have the same permissions or app store or whatever this is.
Yeah.
And dear God, it's Windows RT all over again. It's a thing that looks like Teams that isn't Teams. Smart.
Yeah.
So
I don't know why they put that name on it, much less had a separate thing called chat on top of that. Like good luck finding stuff. But so it's like you often get these little teams that whip something out and it gets pushed into the box. Right. And then it's an orphan.
It's a great screenshot and it's a great like bullet point when you're talking about what's new in Windows 11. Like this notion that you can instantly and for free talk to anybody in the world at any time and look, here's a video preview that looks neat. It sounds great. And it just was never used by anybody.
But certainly the import of Skype into a new app so that you didn't have Skype around anymore would have made more sense.
The idea there is that whatever people are out in the world using Skype, maybe they're on Windows 10, maybe they're on a mobile device, is you have this new client in Windows 11 and it just automatically connects to those people.
Yeah.
It is Skype, basically, right? To Skype, it appears to be Skype. Mm-hmm. They never did that. And by the way, to this moment, I don't know that they even have plans to ever do that. Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah. And just as a kicker, like the underlying audio video codec for Skype is the same one for Teams. Likely is the same one for Team Consumer. Like they're sharing code anyway.
Yes. Look, I'm sure there are technical difficulties that I don't understand. I'm not going to.
Identity problems at Microsoft? Perish the thought. Why would we have any problems with identity at Microsoft?
Yep. Well, and the other interesting thing here, it is kind of a shit show, frankly, is I think we talked about this, is this notion that the Teams client on mobile lets you connect to both the consumer and business sides. You have to switch your profile. It's not seamless, but in one app, you can go back and forth between consumer and work.
But only on your phone.
Only on your phone. So, I mean, are you telling me that the highly extensible Team app that is a platform could not accommodate this? Like, are you serious? But I guess that's what we're telling us. So I don't know. Anyway, not as big of a deal as the last thing. I honestly, the sad thing about this to me is that the chat bit was actually really good. Nobody knows because nobody used it. And Microsoft somehow sat silent because they were just too busy pushing Teams and let Zoom kind of run away with the consumer mindshare during the pandemic. And that should have been a time for them to shine too, but they didn't do it. That's all.
All right. Any more here with the moment?
The moment, no. Just a couple of related things. There was some beta channel builds inside a program last week. No major changes there. Although notifications, it looks like, are going to change in an interesting way. I actually don't find notifications in Windows to be particularly annoying. And maybe it's just the apps I use, or I don't do much to turn off notifications. I use web apps for things like mail and calendar, so I don't really get those kind of things. But apparently some people find that very annoying. So I guess if you use the mail app or whatever, you might get an annoying number of notifications. So they're going to put some controls in there so that Windows will actually notice that you're not interacting with notifications, and we'll just start showing you less of them. So that's fine. No big deal there. And then the last one was, and this is really semi-related, is we know that the Meteor Lake generation of Intel CPUs will start arriving this fall with the desktop chips and then the mobile chips next January. We know that these will be the first generation of Intel chips to include integrated AI engines like AMD is doing now with some of their chips. And now Intel is saying that they will rebrand these things, basically dropping the letter I and then adding an Ultra line for kind of the higher end processors. I don't actually know what this means to the current designations where they have UPH series processors, right? If you think about those things, I would say that, U series processors are mainstream. P/H series processors are probably premium, and maybe those will be ultra processors going forward. This is just shuffling the chairs on the Titanic, frankly. Right? Because what's the difference what these things are called? Like, in a way, I don't know. I don't think anyone's shopping Intel stickers when they look at PCs, frankly. Exactly. I mean, you want to avoid like Core i3 or like anything that says Pentium or Celeron or whatever the low end names are now, obviously. But, Core i5, Core i7, Core i9, whatever, like, yeah, fine. I think for most people, whatever. I don't think.
But no I. It's just Core 5 and Core 7.
There's no I in Core, Richard. Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
And the only 9s now are Ultra 9s.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? I guess. And the only 3s are non-Core Ultra or whatever. So I guess, I don't know. This doesn't seem like a big deal to me, but we'll see. We'll see what it looks like when they come out. So like I said, desktop will happen first. That's usually what? IFA, maybe September, October. And then the portable chipsets come out at CES, or announced at CES.
I'll build a new workstation in the fall and tell you all about it.
There you go. Make sure it's an Ultra chipset.
I think so, yeah. And I think I'm going to go mini ATX, like something compact.
Yeah.
All those old school Intel stickers I saved will be
single board computing.
Very expensive.
Oh no, you'll be able to sell them on eBay, Mike, for sure. They'll be hot.
Vintage Intel stickers, $500 a pop. All right, let us take a quick break before we come back with more confusion on this week's episode of Windows Weekly. This episode of Windows Weekly is brought to you by Miro, which can help you stave off confusion. Miro is a fantastic online tool that can help make sure that you and your team are all on the same page. So let's think about this. I'll sort of pose a question for you. Are you and your team still going from tab to tab, from tool to tool, from window to window, and in that context switching, losing brilliant ideas and important information along the way? Well, why not try Miro? Because with Miro, that doesn't need to happen. Miro is the collaborative visual platform that brings all of your great work together no matter where you are. Whether you're working from home or you're in a hybrid workspace, everything comes together in one place online. Creating that one great product needs input from everyone, and that's where Miro comes in with its capabilities to democratize collaboration and input. Miro's infinite shared boards gives product teams a perpetual space where they can simply drag and drop insights and data so nothing is lost or forgotten. Miro covers a breadth of use cases so users can build visual assets, present findings, and run brainstorms with cross-functional teams. You can build out your product vision on a Miro board by brainstorming with sticky notes, comments, live reactions, a voting tool, and even a timer to make sure you come to a consensus quickly. Express yourself in creative ways and bring the whole group together around one idea. It could happen with a quick wireframe, or drawing with the pen tool, or perhaps even putting images and mock-ups on the Miro board. And Miro users report saving up to 80 hours per user per year by streamlining conversations and cutting down meetings. We use Miro for the show Ask the Tech Guys because it is this one pane, this one place where all of this information can come together And that means not having to pop open a new tab to find the Google sheet and pop open another tab to search through Twitter for questions that have been asked. It all exists right there. And with the integrations that Miro offers with other services, then we can also kind of automatically pull in information and make sure it's all there on the Miro board. It's pretty cool what you can end up doing, and I think that's why it's worth going and checking it out. They, kind of highlight the way that it can be used with the team, but even as an individual person, I found it useful as this kind of one spot to drop everything that I want to have and not have to bounce back and forth and try to figure out the little bit of information that I need. And, especially we go home with these kind of smaller screen devices, it can be nice to have just that one window and not have to worry about switching between a bunch of different spaces. The end result, Miro is going to give your team, or even just you, the chance to always stay connected to real-time information. And it gives project managers and product leads a bird's eye view of the whole project to ensure nothing slips through the cracks. You can be a part of more than 1 million users who join Miro every month. Get your first 3 boards for free to start working better at Miro.com/podcast. That's MIRO.com/podcast. Head there today. Your first 3 boards are free, and you can just try it. Just give it a try. I think you're going to be impressed with the tool and also all the fun stuff you can do with it. Miro.com/podcast. And thanks so much for your support of Windows Weekly. All right, back from the break, and now it's time to talk about a new outlook on life.
I wish, yeah. So this is a topic I'm not outraged about.
Ooh, okay.
So it has that benefit.
I thought this was the all rage show. Like it's
oh, don't worry,
all the rages.
Oh, there's rage coming. It's just not from me. Mm-hmm. So Microsoft announced recently that they would replace the Mail and Calendar app in Windows 11 specifically with the new Outlook, which is a web-based version of Outlook that's coming soon in late 2024. This sounds smart to me. The Mail app, Calendar app is actually fine in Windows 11, but the Mail app, which is in Windows 10 and 11, is a steaming pile of crap. It's terrible. And it's a Fisher-Price toy. It's ridiculous. And it's needed replacing for a long time. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, in Mail and Calendar, we have something called Microsoft Outlook, right, which is the full Outlook client that's been around since 1997, and is the center of many people's lives, right? A lot of old school kind of Microsoft guys, this is their entire life. It's an Outlook. I don't use full Outlook, as I call it. I find it to be too complex. But the other issue is that it's just not really friendly toward non-Microsoft accounts. And I have, fortunately or unfortunately, whatever, I have to use a Google account every day for my primary account. So it's just not good for that. And, after trying all kinds of different things, I basically just use web clients, and I pipe all of my email accounts into a single place. I've configured Gmail so that I can respond. If I get an email to my Hotmail account, I hit reply, it replies from Hotmail, right? So I just have one place to go for emails. It's fine. But that's just me. This announcement, and I would have bet big money this would never have happened, generated an unbelievably negative response from a lot of people. Apparently, there is a world of people out there who loves the Mail app in Windows 10 and 11 for some reason, and they cannot believe that Microsoft is doing this. Now, here's the thing. This app has been in development for years. They're not doing this until next October, November, somewhere in that time frame. Not this October, November, like 2024. This is 18 months away. And people will bring up these issues that with the app. And the two I hear the most are it's not touch friendly and it doesn't support offline, which actually is a problem. It will support offline. Microsoft has already announced that. And the touch thing is a little strange to me. This is a small audience, right? The number of people who actually use touch devices regularly, and that's their primary interface, and that's how you're doing email every day, that's going to be a tiny number of people. It sounds like people are just, this is the the history teacher guy from back to school. He's passionate, but we don't know about what. Like, I don't actually know where this anger comes from.
I think I know what it is, and I don't even know why they did this.
Yeah.
The logical thing to do is to say, hey, starting in September of 2024, when you install a new version of Windows 11, you're going to get an Outlook client instead of a separate mail and calendar app. And stop there.
You could actually, I would take it one step further and say, we will continue to provide the old apps through the store. So if you,
why not?
For some reason,
go get them.
Yep, you can get them if you want. They do that with the Photos app.
I think the only thing people are outraged at is you said, hey, starting September 24, we're going to take something away from you. That was free.
It's something terrible, though.
But it's just
like, we're going to take away your melanoma.
This wound? Like, why do this to yourself? You get nothing from it. Just say, and here's the point. You do want to phase out the old apps. They don't want to support the UWP apps anymore. That's the truth.
Yeah.
Right. They want those apps gone. So let them die a natural death.
They're doing it on a really protracted schedule, though. I mean, it's not like they're like, hey, by the way, in 6 weeks, this thing's going away. No, this is like a year and a half from now.
Yeah, but either way, as soon as you tell someone you're taking something away, they're angry.
Yeah.
So don't do it.
They are.
Right.
They are angry.
Yeah. So don't do it. Just put it out there. And then as it gets used, say, hey, usage on the old apps is dropped down a low. We're going to stop supporting them. But you do it as you make it perceived as a feedback loop. I don't know if it's actually going to be true or not. It's not even important, right? The real issue here is don't do we're the large corporation and we're going to tell you what you like kind of move. It's a dumb thing to do. And it buys you nothing.
Here's what's weird about this. There are a lot of things weird about this. The way this was announced was through the admin center for Microsoft 365. Which is not a consumer portal.
No,
it's for businesses. Now, the reason for that is that there's an Outlook organization inside of Microsoft 365, and they're in charge of everything called Outlook. And there's a lot of different things called Outlook. Outlook, obviously, the app I described, that's part of Microsoft Office, the big app. Outlook on the web, which is the commercial web client. Outlook.com, the consumer web client. And then the Outlook mobile clients. But as it turns out, mail and calendar are considered Outlook clients. They're the consumer versions that ship with Windows. Although you can connect your business account to them, actually. So that's like how they announced it, right? So I think a lot of people who didn't really look at it closely said, well, hold on, wait, what are you doing? You're getting rid of like the full Outlook client? And that's not actually what it says, right? Anyway, Microsoft responded to this very quickly. I just went off on a 15-minute rant about Windows 11. I can assure you, I'm never going to hear from anyone. Mm-hmm. But this got Microsoft's attention because this is part of Microsoft 365. Remember, I said different organizations to run a little differently. Mm-hmm. And so a day later, they said that they were going to, they saw the feedback and they're going to reevaluate. And then a day later, meaning today, they came back and said, no, we're still doing it. So, but the thing is, they reworded the announcement that's part of this Microsoft 365 admin portal to be a little clearer about what exactly is happening.
Right.
You have the option. Well, I'll get to this. I have a tip about this later, but if you run Mail or Calendar today in Windows 10 or 11, you should see a switch up in the corner that says use the new Outlook, right? You can flip back and forth today. So you have the option to at least try it. Anyway, the clarity here is, this is actually not particularly clear, but let me get through this. Users who have a Microsoft 365, I'll just leave it at that, subscription with access to the desktop apps. So that's everything but Microsoft 365 Basic, right? Which is only the web apps. Can use the new Outlook for Windows. Don't have to use, but they can use. So if you're a paying Microsoft customer, unless you get the cheap commercial version, which your workplace is providing, you can use this app with that account, right? Okay, good. Users who do not have a Microsoft 365 subscription with access to the desktop apps, Basic, will have to use their Outlook on the web. Of course, that makes sense because that's what they get access to. They get access to the web apps. Those are the commercial customers, right? So this doesn't impact them. They can use it. They don't have to. Users will be able to use this. Now we're talking, this is actually consumers. I'll word it that way. Consumers, anyone, individuals will be able to use the new Outlook for Windows client with any personal email account, meaning Outlook.com, Gmail, etc., even if you don't pay for a subscription. That covers anyone who just bought Windows, or sorry, no one buys Windows. Someone buys a Windows PC or owns a Windows PC. They have Windows 10 or 11. They can get this app and they can use it with their Gmail account for free. Now, what they don't say there is you're going to see ads, by the way, and you will see ads if you're not paying for it. They give you the option to pay for it. I want to say it's about $2 a month if you want to just not see ads in the app. But whatever. And that's what's changing at the end of 2024. This is not changing today, although you can do all that stuff today. That's a year and a half from now. That is the minor change that is occurring. It will replace the mailing calendar app in Windows, right? Now, the original announcement said Windows 11 specifically. I would be surprised if they didn't mean all supported versions of Windows, meaning Windows 10, 11, and probably by that point, we're getting close to then Windows 12 as well, right? This is not a big deal. This is not a big deal.
I think you hit it. It's just bad communicating.
Yeah, I guess.
I'm also a big believer in, like, don't make all the decisions. Be affected by the initial set of decisions. Offering a new and better client is fine. And then at least show, hey, people are using this. They really seem to like it. We're going to reduce support on these things. Like, this is smart people doing dumb things in the sense that they figure out the end game and then they deliver the whole end game rather than let people come along for the ride.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I feel like people today are trained to be so antagonistic so quickly. Mm-hmm. Any affront that it's like we're not just sensitive, we're sensitive to things that don't even have anything to do with us, you know? Like it's not even over. I don't know what you call that. We need a different word for it. We're not overly sensitive. We're like ridiculously sensitive. And anyway, this is a positive move. Actually, I don't quite get it. I've looked at the responses. I mean, people will say, you know, it's the worst thing ever, and I'll say explain, and they'll put their little list up there, and it's like, you're really getting. They're like, look at this. There's an area of blank space here in the UI, and it's like, yep. Like, whatever. Anyway, this is not a big deal. Made into a big deal. I cannot wait until the end of 2024 when we can talk about this again. In fact, let's promise never to talk about this again until the end of 2024. Amazing.
Okay. I mean, that's fair.
Yeah,
and
amazing.
So this is where I ask, is that all you want to say about it?
It is all I want to say.
Okay. Well, then let's...
also, I still hate the UK CMA. I hate those guys. I don't know if I've stressed that enough.
What do you feel about AI?
I'm mixed on AI.
Okay.
Yeah. So this happened while we were recording the show, so I haven't really read a lot about this. This is not related to the Activision Blizzard stuff, but Google has Google has filed a formal complaint with the U.S. Federal Trade Commission alleging that Microsoft has used its dominant position in enterprise software to push customers toward its other cloud services, meaning Microsoft 365, et cetera. Yeah, that sounds about right. I don't know what to tell you. So yeah, probably. Google also accused Microsoft of this in the EU, and this is probably one of those examples of regulatory bodies kind of working in lockstep a little bit, which makes sense, right, across different jurisdictions. So we'll see. It's fair to say that I want to say that I think Google Cloud, which is that part of Google, you know, the part that's not advertising based, you know, the part that makes no money, those guys, they're a tiny company in many ways, right?
Yeah, they've made it up to a couple of percentage points beside advertising. I think it's 90% ads.
Yeah, it's 80 something percent, but yeah, it's pretty
and then everything
close.
else.
Yep. One might argue that Google has used its dominant position in search/advertising to push customers towards its cloud services. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. That sounds crazy. Anyway, we'll see what happens. I will say, look, I mean, if Microsoft is dominant in any market, I don't know how you define this market, but I would say it's the enterprise or productivity or whatever you want to call that. If you look at Google, what do they call it today? Google Workspace compared to, say, Microsoft 365. This is like the Death Star versus a single X-Wing. They're completely different sizes. So, you know, they could be right. I'm not saying they're not right. I'm just saying that the UK CMA can go. No, I'm sorry. Sorry.
Oh boy.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's fine. CMA. All right. Well, anything else with that? Or do you want to talk about the cyber attacks? Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know that we talked about this too much on the show, and I don't think I even wrote about this at the time, but early in June, there were, I want to say at least 2 outages across Azure, Microsoft 365, Teams, et cetera. And whatever. These things happen from time to time. I guess Microsoft's dominance of this market did not prevent that from happening. This past week, Microsoft revealed that this was in fact a distributed denial of service attack. So it was like a cyber attack. And I don't know that they said, malicious foreign actor. I don't know. It's the group called Storm 1359. I'm afraid to look up that year to see what that relates to. If that's what that is, I don't know. But anyway, it was just it's what all DDoS attacks are. You basically throw a bunch of traffic at it, and then Cloudflare steps in. So I don't know whatever, but obviously Microsoft does their own thing there. Anyway, that was that. That's all they really said about it. But
I'm interested to see that they admitted that it was an attack. I guess you have to say why your outage happened. So the fact that an attack was sufficient to actually impact their cloud is interesting.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point. That it did pull. It
was sophisticated enough to hurt Microsoft. Yeah.
That's kind of scary.
Yeah.
All right. Well, do you want to tell us about Opera? Because I don't hear you talk about, you do talk about a lot of browsers, and it's kind of interesting to see Opera make the show.
Well, this is interesting because of what they're doing, right? So Opera has re-architected their browser. Honestly, on the back end, the big deal here is they're going with kind of a multi-threaded compositor, which is a first for a major browser. I think there might be some others that do it, but Chrome, Edge, Brave, I guess, probably don't do this. So there's some performance benefits that they're modularizing it, or as Microsoft would call it, componentizing it. So there's some benefits to that. This will help them add more features, et cetera, et cetera. But the thing they're pushing, of course, is this integration of their Aria AI, which is based on ChatGPT. And they're calling it the first native browser AI ever, right? Microsoft and other browsers offer kind of AI capabilities in a sidebar, but this is integrated right into it. The thing that's kind of fun about it is when you're using this browser, you can bring up an interface that's similar to the one you would get in Terminal or Visual Studio Code, where you can type in commands. So you can type Windows key plus Control, and it actually brings up it looks like a text box in the middle of the browser, and you can just ask questions. And the questions are answered in the sidebar, so you can go back to whatever you were doing, and then you can go over there and continue that conversation. Yeah. So obviously, when you're talking third-party AI, as I will refer to this, the question is going to be how good it is. This one's based on ChatGPT 3.5. And they also bring in live results from the web to kind of keep it up to date, because we know one of the problems with the ChatGPT stuff is it only goes back to a certain time or go forward to a certain time, I guess. So it's interesting. I just wanted people to know about it. I'm not switching browsers or anything like that, but I think it's, we know that AI is going to change everything, and I say that in a small sense, that AI will be marketed in every product that we ever use, and some of these things will be great and some of them will be questionable. And I think putting AI into a browser actually makes some sense.
I agree. There are a few places where I think that it works more than others, and sort of having it at as close to the base level as I can is where I want it to be able to regularly pull from it. Because right now, I in the instances where I want to use it, I've got to pop open a new tab or new window, go do something, and then pop back. So I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, one of the things that Richard and I think Leo were all kind of very interested in at the Microsoft Build Conference last month was this description of how Microsoft would roll out AI over time. And they talked about the first implementations, the co-pilots, as being this side-by-side interface. So you would have like a pane that opens up on the side, and it doesn't, you're still using the same old apps and the same old system, but on the side, you get this thing. And the next phase is where it becomes integrated more. It's inside, I guess. I can't remember the exact language they use, but this feels like a bridge between those two worlds. It literally will open a sidebar. So the UI is, it's side by side, but it's also a new browser engine and a new browser architecture. And it is integrated in a different way. And it feels, well, I haven't used it a lot. I'm not, like I said, I'm not switching to it, but it has the feel of a more integrated way of doing AI in a browser than, say, opening a sidebar and asking it a question there. Interesting. It's just interesting.
I agree. All right. Well, it's actually, I believe, time for Xbox Corner.
Yay.
Yay.
Or boo, because the first story, unfortunately, is that we knew this was coming. This has been hinted for a long time, but The Verge had a story today that Xbox Series X, which is the high-end version of the console, and Xbox Game Pass will be getting price hikes next month. I had kind of assumed these price hikes would be tied potentially to the Activision Blizzard acquisition, but I guess we'll see. So remember that Sony raised the prices on its PS5 everywhere but the US, I think, last year, right? And it turns out that Microsoft also will not be raising the price in the US. But if you live basically anywhere else in the world or most places in the world, starting in August, the price is going to go up. So,
that was unclear to me. I didn't realize. So they're leaving it in the US, but it's elsewhere.
Yeah.
Why do you think are the best sales in the US? So they are making up for that elsewhere? Or if you have any guess as to why they feel comfortable raising it elsewhere?
So I've been reading a lot about, we're going to get to this at the end of the show too. I've been reading a lot about and watching videos about kind of the history of personal computing and video gaming and so forth. And one of the things that's pretty consistent over the years is that tech products are always cheaper in the United States for some reason than they are in other countries. You can't, as an American, travel somewhere to buy cheap tech and bring it home. That's just not a thing, Although I've had people do home swaps at my house, back when we lived in Massachusetts, especially, and they would bring empty suitcases so they could bring home stuff from the United States back to their home in Europe somewhere where these things were much more expensive. So I don't know I don't know what the machinations are there. I don't know if it's just tied to like strong US dollar or whatever. Although right now, I don't know if you're following the financial news these days. The US dollar is, we're in kind of we're not calling it a recession, but we are certainly having some pricing problems. I think there would be a major backlash for these products' biggest countries if they ever tried to raise the prices here. I just don't think I don't know if it's a sociological thing. That's not the way that electronics go, so to speak, typically, ever, pretty much. So I don't know. I mean, I just know that this is common for some reason. And like I said, Sony did it with the PlayStation 5. One thing that does go up in price, though, are the services, right? And that's something we all kind of struggle with. I don't have this as a story, but, Spotify was supposed to release like a hi-fi version of their service, and they were going to charge $5 more a month. Apple, which subsidizes their service through their hardware sales, released hi-fi, essentially, or, all the different music tiers they have, just no added cost. So they had to kind of hold off on those plans. And now they're rejiggering this to have like a better premium plus, whatever they're going to call it. I think they're calling it sub-premium, which, by the way, best brand ever, version of the product that will have other stuff, not just the hi-fi music, because they're trying to avoid that. But everything, Netflix has gone up a lot in recent years. All of the TV services like YouTube TV, et cetera, have gone up big time over the past few years. And I think we've collectively understood that this Game Pass thing, which is typically $9.99 a month for everything but Ultimate, was always going to kind of go up. Like this was always going to happen. So that will be happening. Although I should it doesn't say US specifically. So this is a third-party report. So Microsoft hasn't announced this, but apparently if you live in Norway, Chile, Denmark, Switzerland, or Saudi Arabia, the prices are not going up there. So
it occurs to me that the new price for the Xbox Series X is the same as the PS5.
There you go. Yeah.
Which seems unwise considering how much more popular the PS5 is.
Could not agree more. Yep.
Like, given you're going to spend the same amount of money, and in Canada, that's $650. I think you'd buy a PS5.
Canadian to US, right? So $650 Canadian today is about $495.
Yeah.
A little under 500. And then an Xbox Series X, how much does that cost in the US? Is it more than $500? It can't be more. It's probably $400. Is it? I don't know what.
The X?
For an X?
Yeah, an X.
$499.99.
Yeah, that's $499. There you go. I don't know. Maybe it could just be exchange rate based.
Yeah, it's pretty close. The reality, of course, is Canadians are very good at buying stuff in the U.S. if they need to, because we're very nearby. So you try and keep it pretty close to parity.
Yeah, U.S. and Canada and Mexico benefit from, and Canada and U.S. all benefit from having the same power plugs and voltage and all that stuff. So it's like
and a shared trade agreement. So
yeah, electronics they're easy to bring across the borders. So
yeah.
But again, I would not like, I would sneak Sonos speakers into Mexico in my luggage. Not saying I've done that, rather than buy them in Mexico because they're so much more expensive there.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is. All electronics are. God help me if I ever lose my phone while I'm in Mexico. I'd have to buy like an A series Motorola or something. This is expensive.
Keep a spare.
Yeah. Curious. Okay, sorry. We'd spent a lot of time on that. So in a weird, this is one of those things, like, you hear it and you're like, oh, I thought they would have done this already. Microsoft confirmed in an interview with Axios that they have stopped creating games for Gen 8 Xbox, which is Xbox One. Actually, Xbox One is probably Gen 6, 7, 8, but whatever. Meaning new games that ship from Microsoft Studios will not run on Xbox One. One of the weird things that happened between the move from Xbox One to Xbox Series X and S is that the branding for what games work is kind of unclear, because they're basically the same architecture. So it's easy to make cross-compatible games. When you went from Xbox 360, which was based on PowerPC, to Xbox One, which was x86 essentially, that's a much bigger deal, right? Making that transition. So those games would be like Xbox 360, Xbox One. And now the games are basically Xbox, meaning also new supported Xboxes. So for the past few years, it's been Xbox One plus Xbox Series X and S for the most part. And so this is Microsoft just kind of indicating that they're moving on to the current generation entirely, which I don't think many people will lament the passing of the Xbox One per se.
How many games is Sony making for the PS4 these days?
Yeah, there you go. I don't know. Maybe they probably make some. I don't know. That's a good question.
Not so sure.
Yeah, I'm not so sure either, actually. But third-party games are going to continue to support the console where it makes sense. But there will be a time when, the next Call of Duty title or the next whatever title, I don't know whatever else, will come out and say this one's going to be the one where we move forward entirely to the new generation. But Microsoft is already doing it, so I would expect anything that comes out this holiday season from Microsoft Studios will be current gen only. Which, like I said, I don't have an issue with that. Speaking of games no one plays, Halo Infinite, they're still trying. God love them. They just announced last week and released, I think today or yesterday, season 4. They're very proud of themselves. Season 3 and 4 were delivered on schedule, which is great because the original game was delayed by a year, and then season 1 was delayed by at least 6 months. I don't remember the exact time scale there, but they're getting back on schedule. Everybody, I will say this, I gave up on it. I'm actually on the final boss, and I can't deal with it. But I've been playing Halo Infinite. It's kind of a tedious game, frankly. But I think the big deal for these seasons is not the single player campaign; it's the multiplayer stuff and the all the different game modes that you play with other people. So, there's new game modes like Infection, which is it's a classic game mode dating back to Halo 2. So that's here now. New maps, new Forge updates. That's the game level editor, et cetera, et cetera. So,
man, increasingly it feels like all games are getting so focused on that.
The seasons, yeah.
And keeping people playing it with other people as opposed to the stories. I like the stories.
Well, yeah. So I think there's different ways you can keep games fresh. I mean, I think in the old days when games were smaller, you just release a new one every so often. You know, Assassin's Creed games used to come out like once a year, or every couple of years. Call of Duty comes out every single year, basically. It seems unsustainable. These games cost like $1 billion plus each to make. They're like, or millions of dollars, I'm sorry, to make. And they're like major Hollywood movies.
Hundreds of millions.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Keeping them in the market longer and supporting them longer makes sense. I will say for the Microsoft Game Studio stuff, they've done a great job supporting existing titles for a long period of time. Sea of Thieves is maybe one of the best versions, or examples of that, rather. Gears, the latest Gears games have been like that. They just, they support them for a long time, like longer than you might expect. And I think it's not horrible. It's not a bad thing to do. Flight Simulator, obviously, has seen all kinds of free updates, world updates, etc. So they're good about that stuff.
Do you have room for Flight Simulator in your new place?
In my life?
In your life.
Well, you have been around Micah for this. He hasn't unpacked his Xbox yet. He's been Xbox free for months.
What?
So I've been.
Are you doing okay, Paul?
Actually, it's pretty healthy. So for the past, since March 2nd, I've been playing games only occasionally and on the PC, not on the console. Oh, wow. It helps that Halo Infinite is such a crappy game because it's stopped me from playing all the time. I actually credit Halo with this capability for me, so it's been good. But I've been playing like older games too. I've actually played quite a bit of Doom 3 again, which is an awesome game. It's nothing like Doom 1 and 2, but really scary, kind of atmospheric. You got to use the WASD keys and the mouse and everything. It's like old school, but it's it's cool. That's all good.
I actually picked up a pre-release game that has totally captivated me.
Oh,
which one?
Called Dredge. It's on Steam. It's still not. The first bits came out in March, but you're in a little boat. Oh. And you're doing a little fishing, and you can pull stuff off the bottom, and there's a bigger story going on. Right. But it's a little cartoony, and it's very atmospheric.
Yeah, this looks a little bit like Oxenfree.
It does have Oxenfree vibes. Yeah,
interesting.
I have. It caught me, and it's got a story. Just like you said, Mike. You're playing a thing,
right? It's got a. Is it not a horror vibe, but almost like a mystery kind of thriller vibe to it?
Oh, believe me, at nighttime on the sea, it's it gets pretty terrifying.
That's good. That's good. That's well done. Then.
Nice.
One game actually I've been meaning to play and haven't is that Black Mesa port of the original Half-Life, which is on Steam.
That's so great. Yeah.
Oh God.
I mean, the graphics are super vintage, but again, the love affair you have is from the original game.
Yeah.
And
I played that
storytelling.
Game. I played that through easily a dozen times. Yeah. Easily.
Great storytelling there. Great world.
Yes. I wish they would do more with it. Idiots. Anyway,
they're making millions on Dota 2.
Yeah. Oh God, please. Yeah, which I don't care about in the slightest.
No.
So let's see. We're well into the second half of the month. So Microsoft has announced the second wave of games coming to Game Pass across, PC, console, and cloud. Nothing major. Maybe Need for Speed Unbound. Although I have not played a Need for Speed game. It's possible the last one I played, I think it was a mobile game, which, if I'm not mistaken, I finished. It might have even been, it sounds impossible, but it might have been on Windows Phone. Is that possible?
Wow.
What?
I think it might have been a Windows Phone version of Need for Speed. Maybe. I think so. If it wasn't, it was something very similar. Yeah, Need for Speed Hot Pursuit.
Hot Pursuit.
No, that isn't it. It might have been, there's one called Undercover. Maybe that's the one. Need for Speed Undercover. That sounds more. I think it was that one. It doesn't matter. But I actually, whichever one it was, I actually finished it. If you can believe that. Yes. Anywho. All right. The rest of it, I don't know. I really don't know. I don't recognize any of these games.
I was going to say, none of those titles
it's weird, right?
I've ever heard of at all.
This happens a lot. Yeah. Arcade Paradise, I assume, is actually classic arcade games. So that might be
looks like it could be kind of fun.
Yeah.
I don't know that I want to play a game that's just called Fist. it has a terrifying looking bunny rabbit with a biomechanical fist.
Sure.
I'll skip it. Thanks.
It looks like a red microphone.
Red glowing microphone.
Nobody would do that. That's not a thing.
Yeah, why would anyone ever?
My brother. And then finally, there's an ID at Xbox showcase coming on July 11th. ID at Xbox is Xbox's indie game segment. So that's kind of a neat follow-up to the game showcase they just had last week, except that was all major publishers. So this is indie publishers. And don't write off indie publishers. Some of the best games ever published.
Totally.
Ever. And not just on console, but wherever came out of this type of thing. And, Super Meat Boy and what was that? Firewatch was an amazing one. There's a lot. Oxenfree actually is one. We just talked about Oxenfree. So anyway, there's something to pay attention to if you care about games.
All righty. Let us take another quick break before we come back with the back of the book. I do want to tell you about our next sponsor. It is Lenovo, orchestrated by the experts at CDW, who are bringing you this episode of Windows Weekly. The helpful people at CDW understand that as the world changes, your organization needs to adapt quickly to be successful. So how can CDW keep your business ahead of the curve? Well, with Lenovo ThinkPads. These powerful devices deliver the business class performance you're looking for thanks to Windows 10 and the Intel Evo platform. With your remote teams working across the country and around the world, collaboration isn't a problem because Lenovo ThinkPads keep your organization productive and connected from anywhere. Plus, CDW knows your workforce has different work styles and needs flexibility, which is why Lenovo ThinkPads are equipped with responsive tools and built-in features that let your team work seamlessly across their favorite tools. Now just think about that for a second. And let's not forget about security. These high-performing machines protect at the highest level with built-in hardware to guard against modern threats without slowing your team down. When you need to get more out of your technology, Lenovo makes seamless productivity possible. CDW makes it powerful. Learn more at cdw.com/Lenovo Client. And thank you, Lenovo, orchestrated by the experts at CDW, for sponsoring this week's episode of Windows Weekly. We are back from the break, and it is time for the back of the book.
So I mentioned the new Outlook app earlier, and I'm sure you already all looked at it and already hate it. But if you didn't, the way you get it, oddly, you can't just go to the Microsoft Store or online somewhere to download it. What you have to do is run Microsoft Outlook, the full client, or better, mail in calendar app in Windows 10 or 11. You'll see a switch up in the right corner that says Try New Outlook. Flip it. It will restart. You get the new Outlook. It's very much like Outlook.com or Outlook on the web. It is, in fact, web-based. It's a nice interface. I think for the core 3 use cases, which are, of course, email, calendar, and contacts, great. It pretty much works as you would expect. It's got a nice UI, et cetera, et cetera. The only thing it gets wrong is something the Microsoft 365 app also gets wrong in Windows. And God, I wish they would fix this, which is this kind of a toolbar of other app icons on the side. So you see like Word, Excel, PowerPoint, et cetera. If you click those, you'll get the web version of those apps, not the version that's on your computer, which is stupid. I feel like Microsoft is sophisticated enough to figure that out, but they have not. So hopefully they will before it's released finally. But give it a shot, and give Microsoft some feedback, and don't just be a little whiner on Twitter complaining about it.
Yeah, come on.
I turned it on for a while.
Yeah. From where though? Are you a traditional Outlook user?
I'm a traditional Outlook user. And I realized how much muscle memory I have in Outlook when they moved all the cheese.
Yeah.
So after a while, it's like, this is just impairing my productivity too much. And I had to go back.
I feel like for a traditional Outlook user, this would be like going from real Teams to Skype. And it's like, everyone's going to have this thing that they use or whatever need they have. And, it's just not going to work for them. They're not going to get a lot of traditional Outlook guys. But for people using mail and calendar and Windows, I mean, let's step up to the plate and use a real app. Maybe
I keep waffling on repaving this laptop just to give it some new life. Because I'm traveling and like paving your laptop and then traveling is dumb.
I pave your laptop while you're traveling.
There you go.
You know?
But I want to go full M365 on it now. Maybe I'll go back to the new Outlook on that machine because I could eventually develop switch hit skills here.
We'll see. We'll talk when you do that. I'm curious. I don't feel like old Outlook guys are gonna be too.
I don't know. Maybe I can be the exception. I am the oldest of Outlook guys from 97 on. Right. Ran my own Exchange server because deep down I hate myself.
The way to say it is, what you say is, you're like, I ran Outlook back when it was called Schedule Plus, youngster.
Yeah. And I occasionally will throw that out there when someone asks me for, especially Microsoft people. It's like, well, hey, let's meet such stuff. I'm like, hey, throw me an S Plus just to see how old they are.
Yep. Yeah. The young people are, huh?
Now it's Teams. It's only Teams. There is only Teams.
That's right. They should call those S Pluses.
There you go.
So the app pick of the week is tied to the fact that I'm starting an article series on kind of retro computing and gaming. I kind of went into this reluctantly in a way. Like I think I've spent the better part of my adult life tamping down this part of my personality. Like I'm not a fan of people who like cosplay as like comic book characters or run around with lightsabers and stuff like that. But I'm into all this stuff, right? And now that I'm in this tiny apartment, like the one thing I can't do is I'm not going to buy like a classic Amiga and like a computer and have it set up. Like I don't have room for that stuff. But there is a lot of emulation out there and a lot of different ways to run this stuff that's actually kind of cool. And I, like I said, I spent a lot of time reading books about this stuff. I'm reading a 3-book series on the Commodore history, for example, right now, and watch a lot of YouTube videos. I'm listening. The audiobook I'm listening to is something called Atari Game. No, it's not. It's called. It doesn't matter what it's called. Once Upon Atari, which is written by the guy who wrote the E.T. game, which is widely heralded incorrectly as being the cause of the video game crash of 1983. Anywho, so I'm going to start to go down this path. So what I decided to do for the app pick this week is kind of start with something I'm actually going to write about probably months from now, but it's kind of the heart of my own retro obsession, which is the Amiga. And there are many different ways to do this. I have actually done in the past a Raspberry Pi based Amiga. I got a cute little fake Amiga 500 case for it, that's fit around the Raspberry Pi.
Yeah.
But you can just do it purely in software. You can run all the stuff on your PC. So the way to do that is through something called Amiga Forever. There are different tiers of it. If you order the physical product, you can actually get a version that has DVD movies of Commodore history stuff, which I think is very interesting, but even just the downloadable stuff. And you can run images of the different Amiga systems over the years, the Amiga 1500, 2000, 3000, on and on it goes. So you can kind of experience that in an emulator window like you would do with any virtual machine. But it also comes with lots of apps and games, and the stuff is just kind of all out there. And so you can bring in image files of games, load them into the emulator and play them, kind of experience the past. And actually it comes with some of my favorite games are actually from that era are on here, including Arkanoid, which I think was the ultimate kind of breakout style game from back in the day. And that was a game my wife actually liked to play, and my wife is not into this stuff at all. But somewhere I have a photo of her playing this game. She liked this.
I remember being in the audience when they first showed the Amiga and that bouncing ball demo that's in the graphic there. And it's all standing up and applauding because that was a miracle incredible what they were doing.
So there's, so the bouncing balls in there. There's also the one where it's like a robot and he's juggling and the balls are reflective. And what you see reflected on the balls is the juggler and the surface of the thing around him. And for the day, that was incredible. Now it runs at 320 by 240, so it's ludicrous, in some ways today. But and the fact that you can emulate this massive multi-processing system, the first big multitasking operating system in a PC on a Raspberry Pi is tells you everything you need to know about how far the world has come. But that's what's cool. It's easier than ever to do this stuff. So
you'd hope the Windows emulator would also upscale it too.
Yeah, of course it does. Yeah, you can. Upscales. It will. You can play it full screen. I mean, it looks good. To me, the stuff looks good. It still looks good.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right, I think it's time to talk about Run as Radio. What are you talking about this week?
This week's show I did with Arya Carly returning. Now, she's actually on the Windows Update team, and so we were specifically talking about Windows Update for Business. and Microsoft's general push to get folks using that. But one of the conversations we had, and I think this would be relevant to our show today, was about the fact that Windows itself moving to much more incremental updates with smaller feature updates. Maybe you've heard about this. And the fact, that is anathema to IT pros, that we manage our machines in a consistent state from a tech support point of view, from a reliability perspective, from an app behavior perspective. And so we're concerned about these continuous updates. Like, do we have to build them up? When do we build a test machine and to validate software and so forth on them to push them back out again? And so that's got into how Windows Update for Business manages that a little more effectively. And that this is an ongoing challenge. And she didn't say this as much. And Ari is very careful. She's a very practiced communicator about this sort of things. But I almost feel like we're getting a sense that Microsoft's going to want us as IT pros to allow more of these feature updates to just happen, because there are also some security related updates there too. And security vulnerabilities due to unpatched machines are becoming more and more of a concern. In fact, I'm now foreshadowing next week's show with Sammy Leho.
All right. So go check that out. runasradio.com. It's where you can find the show and subscribe. Tell us about the brown liquor pick.
Oh my goodness. Well, and for those who don't want to hear about brown liquor, like, this is a bit of a story and this is the end of the show. So if you don't want to listen, you don't have to listen. This starts with a whiskey competition. Now, look, there's a lot of whiskey competitions. In fact, I'm always suspicious of any list of the best of anything. It doesn't matter what it is. Although this particular whiskey competition has been going for 14 years, which gives it a little more legitimacy. And it is sponsored primarily by a group called L'Nez, which is French for the nose. And in fact, it's an organization that specializes in tastes and smells for certain products. They focus on wine and coffee and spirits, and you can subscribe to them and get various packages. That's their business. And so they fund this particular competition. It has close ties in Las Vegas and in Kentucky. And in fact, the competition finished this past week in Bardstown, Kentucky, which is where Heaven Hill and Elijah Craig and a lot of really great American bourbons live. And the reason I bring it up is because their winner this year, the gold medal, was for a Gordon MacPhail Connoisseur's Choice 1989 Mortlock.
What?
31 years old, an ABV of 54.2%. Listen, I get why this might win based on the group of judges they have. This is a whiskey that was put as new make directly into a sherry cask, one sherry hogshead, and let sat for 31 years. And so there's only about 200 bottles of it total. And if you could find one, they're in excess of $1,000. And now that it's won the gold medal, it'll be worse still. Okay, so
before you continue, though, for the uninitiated, why was there that big reaction? What made you go, because you're also hedging.
I wanted to talk about this because it's so many weird things at once. Okay. For starters, Gordon MacPhail doesn't make whiskey. Oh, they're an independent bottler. Now, they've been an independent bottler for more than 100 years. Mm-hmm. And they've been making this thing called Connoisseur's Choice since the 1960s. Like, they're a very interesting way to buy whiskey because essentially these folks know all the distilleries in Scotland and select particular caskings and even go this far as to buy new make and casket themselves to make whiskey. And so that's a very different thing from buying from a distiller. The sort of typical thing you think about of these are the people who make the whiskey, I'll buy the whiskey from them. That's not these guys. And so the fact that they made this own casking is part of the reason they won the award rather than Mortlock, the distillery that made the whiskey.
Got it. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Right, it's unusual. Now, Mortlock's one of the oldest distilleries. It's just not well known. It's one of the many whiskeys out there that doesn't have a brand, although recently, only like in 2014, did they start being branded. It has been functioning since 1823 out of Dufton. Dufton is a proper part of the Space Side. That's where Glenfiddich is and Balvenie is. It's a short drive down from Craigellachie. I've been there many times. What makes Mortlach distinct for whiskey drinkers from Scotland, because again, they were generally not sold anywhere else, is that they do low reflux. Their idea is, we've talked about this in the whiskey making process, and that when you distill, you're using copper stills because you're pulling sulfur from the barley. You're desulfuring it, making it a little lighter. And traditionally, Spays are quite light whiskeys. They just tend to be aged in flavorful barrels like bourbon and port and sherry. But Mortlach makes what's known as a meaty whiskey. So the way they use their stills minimizes the sulfurous pull. And so they take some of the edge off, but they have quite sturdy flavors inside of that. And for more than 100 years, almost all of their whiskey went into blends. That was also the normal trend back then, for a long time, that you blended your whiskeys together. But they are owned by Johnny Walker. So Johnny Walker was actually a person, again, from the 1800s, and his family made whiskey called Walker whiskey. And as they became successful, in fact, Johnny Walker is still the best-selling Scottish whiskey in the world, started buying distilleries to make their blends. And one of them they bought back in 1923 was Mortlach. Now, at that time, they owned several. They owned Talisker, they owned Clynelish, they owned Cardew, Colburn, Dalhuaine. And then in 25, they merged with the United Distillers Company. Now, that was then bought by Guinness, which was then combined with Grand Metropolitan to form an entity in 1997 called Diageo, which is the largest of the Scottish distillery conglomerates in the world today. And again, very much because of Johnny Walker, even back in the United Distillers days, they owned a huge number of these distilleries that had no brands. And so in 91, United Distillers started making a thing called Flora and Fauna series. It wasn't actually named by them. It was named by a whiskey professional, one of the professional tasters. And this was a line of whiskeys from these unknown distilleries. They had a very standard whiskey bottle with a very standardized label. And they weren't made for export. They had no export labels on them. So you only bought them in Scotland. And in the very first edition in 91, they had 26 distilleries that you've never heard of, although you may have heard of a few of them now. I'll rattle them off. Aberfeldy, Altmore, Balmenach, Benrinnes, Bladdock, Blair Atoll, Royal Brackla, Cowhilla, Clynelish, Craiglachie, Dalhuaine, Dufton, Glendullan, Glenlossie, Inchgour, Linkmore, Monachmore, Mortlach, Pittibike, Rosebank, Tenanich, and Speyburn. And a few of those today have brands associated, but back then none of them did. And in fact, as they became more popular and started doing their own branding, they left the Flora and Fauna series. And as Diageo bought more distilleries, which they've done, that were unbranded, they would add them to the Flora and Fauna series. So for me, as an aficionado, when I was in Scotland, I would also go and try the current generation of Flora and Faunas. And being forced to try a dozen to 2 dozen whiskeys over a couple of days, it's a task, but you do what you got to do. The first time I encountered Mortlach myself was a Flora and Fauna bottling in about 2011. It was the Mortlach 16, and it was amazing. It was also $50. So it wasn't particularly expensive. I've gone looking for Flora and Fauna bottlings of Mortlach today since they went branded in 2014. You're talking $500 to $800 now. It is good. I don't know that it's that good, but it is good. So since 2014, Mortlach's been doing their own bottlings. And so the actual whiskey I want to talk about today is the one you could actually buy from a place like Total Wine, the nice. Mortlach 12. So this is the current branding that Mortlach's now doing, which they do the square bottle look. It is that big, meaty whiskey. They tend to age in sherry casks. There are a few different versions, but you're talking about $65. Not a cheap whiskey by any stretch of the imagination, but it's different. It's a more robust Speyside than most are made as, and I find it quite enjoyable. This is not, I'm drinking peat like I'm going Talisker or Lefroy or something like that. I want a cigar, which I never want, but yep. I do want a bigger, more robust whiskey to drink on its own. Mortlach does well for that.
Wow.
I've never heard of this.
That bottle's cool.
And that's why one of the reasons I brought it up, when I saw that they were winning, they won this award, I'm like, what's going on? And so it was fun to just read up. And so, well, this is a story I think a lot of people just don't know. that there are all these whiskeys out there that you've probably not heard of because they're mostly used in blends, right? Johnnie Walker is composed of a bunch of different whiskeys, including Mortlach to this day, that you generally don't hear about. That's how they make their living. They do specialty bottlings now and again, and occasionally, and because of Mortlach's success in Flora and Fauna, they decide to start spending the money on marketing, doing custom bottles, and become a brand.
All right. That's
a picture that's in Discord. It looks very light. That must not be color accurate.
Oh, yeah, it does. It looks yellow.
That can't be right.
Yeah, that might be a funny lighting on that particular one. I would also say that they haven't gotten their consistency particularly identical. So a given bottling of a Mortlach 12 is not as going to be consistent as another bottling too. It's challenging to get them exactly right. That's an art form all unto its own.
I'm surprised anyone could do that accurately just by taste, you know?
Well, and they also cheat. They put color in, right? Which is allowed in Scottish.
That works too.
Yeah.
Yeah. But as far as getting a consistent taste across years, I mean, that's incredible.
And there is plenty of Scottish distillery stills. Well, there's a few that say, hey, each edition is different and, suck it up.
Like wine, it's just the way it is.
Absolutely.
This is the vintage,
Yeah. But the first companies to really make a lot of money on whiskey, your Glenfiddichs of the world, their sales pitch was it tastes the same every time.
Yeah.
That was
I get it. I'm just surprised it's that attainable.
Yeah. And I don't know that it is. I think it's a remarkable set of skills. Every time I've got a chance to sit with those guys and look at how they assemble a given edition, I'm blown away. It's just a crazy set of skills. But what I am fascinated by the true single cast, like what Gordon MacPhail did there with that one barrel waiting 31 years. It's nuts. It's just unreachable, right? Who's going to spend $1,000 on a drink? It's a lot of money. And there's only 200 of them in the first place. Like for a certain group of people, and I know some of those folks.
Yeah. There's probably 200 of them. Yeah.
Yeah. That they want, their whole thing is at Christmas, they pour this for the in-laws and you will never
have this again. Yeah,
exactly. But that's a pretty high privilege for a glass of whiskey. That's good.
Sure.
But is it that good?
I feel like there's a better chance for whiskey to be good over a long period of time than there is for wine. But so many things can go wrong with wine.
I tend to agree. And let's face it, whiskey does not age in the bottle like wine does. Wine was set up to age in bottles. Whiskey ages in barrels. Once it's bottled, it stays the
it's
same.
like an ongoing science experiment that could just go wrong at any point.
And probably has by most counts. I have a few old bottles of wine I've kept for too long, and I'm afraid to open them now.
Yeah, we did the same, and they were all vinegar.
Yeah. I would also say that whiskey will oxidize once the bottle has been opened. And so my general rule is once it's down past half a bottle, sit down with a friend and finish it.
I like it.
It's not going to get better.
Because of science.
Yeah. This is alcoholism with a science cover. I think
we have to drink it. It's not.
We have to. It's only the right thing to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's the right thing to do. All right.
That's my story this week.
That's a good story.
Nice.
And that brings us to the end of this episode of Windows Weekly. This show records every Wednesday around about 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. If you want to tune in to watch the show, you can go to twit.tv/live and see it on YouTube Live, Twitch, and other places where we stream live. Of course, the best way to get the show is by subscribing or following the show, which you do by going to twit.tv/WW. There you will find links to subscribe to audio or subscribe to video on your podcast player or gatherer of choice. We're also on YouTube. It's Spotify. It's Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. We try to be everywhere that you might get your podcasts. And of course, that hitting that subscribe button, hitting that follow button is incredibly helpful and signals to the folks that you're watching every week, that you're tuning in, and we appreciate you for doing that. I also want to mention quickly Club Twit at twit.tv/clubtwit. When you head there, you can subscribe to Club Twit, become a member, $7 a month, $84 a year. And joining the club, it's a great choice to make because you get a lot of great stuff. First, you get every single Twit show with no ads, so it's just the content because you, in effect, are the support for the show. You also get that warm, fuzzy feeling knowing that you are supporting our shows directly and helping us to keep things rolling along. You also gain access to the Twit Plus bonus feed that has extra content you won't find anywhere else, behind the scenes, before the show, after the show, special Club Twit events published there as well, and the Club Twit Discord server, a fun place to go to chat with your fellow Club Twit members and also many of us here at Twit. We've got some very active members there and active hosts and producers as well. Always a fun time in the Discord. And on top of all of that, we've continued to add more and more value to the club over time. We've got some Club Twit exclusive shows, meaning shows that you can only get as part of Club Twit. There's the Untitled Linux Show, which is, as you might imagine, a show all about Linux. You also can get my show, Hands on Mac, which is a short format show that covers Apple tips and tricks. So that's iOS, iPadOS, but Mac OS, all of the stuff. Yes, I'm sure there are some of you out there that are rocking an iPhone, but also use Windows. So that show can be for you, as well as the newly relaunched Home Theater Geeks, featuring Scott Wilkinson. It's a great show talking about the home theater, about all sorts of devices you can get, settings you can use, and everything in between. And then the best show you could get at the club, it's Paul Thurrott's Hands on Windows program. You got to save the best for last, Paul.
I'm going to use that as my new ringtone.
There you go. Paul, what can people expect on Hands on Windows?
Oh, boy. So I'm about to go into where I am recording is different from where the shows are out in the world. So I'm trying.
Yeah.
I did an interesting kind of 3-episode arc, just kind of catching up on things like Moment 3 and the new stuff coming in Microsoft Edge. But I'm about to launch into I guess it's a 4-episode series on the command line stuff that's in Windows 11. So command prompt, starting with terminal, command prompt, PowerShell, Linux. The Linux subsystem for Windows, the Windows subsystem for Linux, and then also WinGet, the Windows Package Manager. So
okay, that's cool. Yeah, that's going to be a series of episodes well worth checking out. Again, all of that at Club Twit, twit.tv/Club Twit. So consider joining the club. Rich Campbell of Run As Radio. Anything you want to plug this week?
Well, I'm happy to have folks go to the show. There's more coming. We put it out every week. Haven't missed a day since we started on April 11th, 2007. I will have conference announcements in the next couple of weeks. So we'll talk about that when we're ready.
Awesome. And Paul Thurrott of Thurrott.com, what about you?
I got nothing.
He's got nothing.
Buy my books, leanpub.com.
Yes.
Please.
Buy the books and join the Thurrott.com membership, right? Both great ways to support Paul. You can find me at Micah Sargent on many a social media network, or yes, you can head to chihuahua.coffee, CHIHUAHUA.coffee, where I've got links to all of the places I exist online, social media, the podcast.
Do I need a chihuahua.coffee? Or something.coffee, I guess.
Yeah, right? Isn't .coffee such a great option? So yes, you can head there if you want to see what else I'm up to. Thank you everyone for tuning in this week. Again, Leo will be back next week. I'm so curious because he always comes back with stories from his travels. So we'll see if he's comes back with a lightsaber or something. I know he was looking forward to going to the Star Wars portion of Disney. So we'll see if what his version of a photo with a dinosaur looks like next week. But thank you both for having me today. And
great to have you on, Micah. You did a great job.
Thanks so much. And thank you, everybody out there. We appreciate you. Remember, consider joining the club. Tell your friends and your family to subscribe to the show. And they will be back next week for another episode of Windows Weekly. Goodbye.
Hey, I'm Rod Pyle, editor-in-chief of Ad Astra Magazine, and each week I join with my co-host to bring you This Week in Space, the latest and greatest news from the final frontier. We talk to NASA chiefs, space scientists, engineers, educators, and artists, and sometimes we just shoot the breeze over what's hot and what's not in space, books, and TV. And we do it all for you, our fellow true believers. So whether you're an armchair adventurer or waiting for your turn to grab a slot in Elon's Mars rocket, join us on This Week in Space and be part of the greatest adventure of all time.